Yes, we are live here. Welcome everybody to this session. I think we have quite some participants here and growing. First of all, we're saving a ton of CO2 by meeting like this, so I guess at least the environment will be happy about this. The topic today is how to speed up product development in virtual settings. My name is Henrik, and with me on my side here I have Christian. And you can see pictures of us here as well. We have quite a bit of experience working with Agile, project management and product development over the past years. And today what we'll go through is a project that we recently did together. Why we hold this session is basically to inspire you guys on how to speed up product development with virtual tools. Is relevant really right now, of course, but it was also relevant before because there are many things that can be done more efficiently like this. We will show you the how. We will actually more than talk about what you need to do. We'll show it by demonstrating one of the key events in a project, in an Agile project. We'll take you through the sprint closure and the sprint opening in an Agile project. After that, we'll spend a little bit of time on what we call the what. I mean, the what are the things you need to do to get there in case you're not there or in case you want to improve it. And we'll take you through that, how you can actually start or improve the way of collaborating virtually.
Great, and you've probably noticed that we are not using PowerPoint as you would normally do in a situation like this. We are instead using a software called Miro, which is our preferred choice for building project rooms. And we've also decided to build it here to give you guys a feeling of how it is. This is not going to be an IT course on how Miro works, but I do want to mention three things. First of all, as you can see here, Miro is a big canvas where you can upload all kinds of files, Excel, PowerPoint, and pictures, and so on. Second of all, it's very collaborative, so it very well mimics the way you would collaborate in a physical project room. So you can use post-its and votes, etc. And lastly, I want to also make the point that for this project that Henrik and I did, we actually used the free version of Miro, so there's no real barriers to entry for doing this kind of stuff. You don't need a license and all that stuff. Great, but what was the case about? So the case company is a huge global player present in more than 120 countries worldwide, and it operates as a producer of physical products for the construction industry. And I can't go into more details than that without revealing too much. You'll have to make do with that. So there were three objectives of this project. The first objective was to develop business instead of products and move away from that focus. The second was to speed up the product development process by introducing agile tools and agile ways of working. And the third objective was to build entrepreneurial teams that were able to independently deliver business value on their own. Great. So this is how the project room actually looked like in the project that we did, and obviously this has been anonymized, which we've put in very big letters, Henrik, to make sure that we don't confuse it. So this project space can be built in whatever way you want it. It doesn't have to follow this template at all. But the way we built it is that we divided it into 5 different sections. So on the far left, you'll see a home section, which has a bit of a mixture of things, a bit about the way we worked and a bit about how we tracked impact and so on. Just to the right of that, there's the product backlog, which is comprised of the assumptions map and release plan. We'll get more into that later. Just beneath that, there's a sprint plan and a sprint backlog. And beneath that, again, there's an actions and retrospective session. And to the far right, the most interesting session to me, at least, is the demo space. Great. So Henrik mentioned earlier that we executed this project using Agile methodologies. And one of these is the Agile sprint rhythm. So the Agile sprint rhythm looks like this in this case. So we did a kickoff workshop, which is the 0 you see in the top right corner here. And then we introduced the Agile rhythm, which is just basically a series of fixed events that occurs on fixed days with fixed agendas and so on. There's 6 different events. One is sprint planning. Second is the daily stand-up. Third is a mid-sprint plan adjustment. Fourth is the sprint review, or demo as we like to call it. And fifth is the product backlog refinement. And lastly, the sprint retrospective.
Yes, and what we'll do today, like also mentioned a little bit earlier, is we'll actually do that. We have 4 of these events that Christian showed. We actually put together in one day, and that is what closes a sprint and actually opens a new sprint. In this case, it was 2-week sprints. It could also easily be a 1-month sprint. So if you look at the bottom, you see it says sprint review. That's the first session. We did that in the morning. The demo, where the purpose here was actually to demonstrate what the solution looks like now. You know, a show, don't tell meeting. It was not about talking blah, blah, about how much we've done and not done. So it was actually showing it, putting it together, seeing how it looks like. That was being demonstrated. While that happened, stakeholders, sponsors, and customers were not allowed to say anything, but were allowed to capture notes and, you know, present later on as feedback. Then after that, we had a 15-minute break. You need a lot of breaks when you work online. So there was a good break. Everybody could go out, stretch, go outside, etc. Then we went to the product backlog refinement. And the purpose of the product backlog refinement is, of course, to adjust the current plan as to what is right now the most important things to work with. We'll give you a few details on that later. After that, another 15-minute break, and then a sprint retrospective. You know, looking back, you know, how is the process going? You know about retrospective from Agile. And then we had a lunch break, and then at 1:30 we started sprint planning by actually cleaning up the old plan, looking into capacity, and then creating a sprint backlog, and with that creating the visual plan and the plan for the 2-week sprint. That was basically it. So let's start with the first of those 4 events.
Yes, let's dive into the sprint review, or the demo session. So for the demo session, we used the demo space, as you can see right here. As Henrik mentioned, the purpose of the demo is to sort of move away from giving status updates and talking about what you have done and stuff like that, and move towards what you have actually decided or what you have learned. And what you see here is 5 different examples of what you can upload. In the demo session, each team member presents what they have uploaded, and all stakeholders stay quiet, as you mentioned. After that, there's then a feedback session, which is captured at the bottom of this demo space right here. And I want to just make a quick comment on the commercial demo and the supply demo that you can see in the top right corner here. So first of all, the commercial demo is essentially a product catalog that the marketing department used to go out to customers and get validation of their commercial assumptions. And that essentially means, do they want to buy it or not? And on the supply side, it was more about, you know, what have we chosen? So in this case, it was about, have we actually chosen a raw material supplier for metals? And in this case, they had chosen 2 suppliers, and then there were a few reasons for choosing those particular 2 suppliers. So this is what a demo looks and feels like, and the outcome is a bunch of feedback from key stakeholders such as management. Customers can even be invited to it, suppliers can be invited to it. A lot of people can be present for this.
Yes, let's move on now to the second event in that day, which is the backlog refinement. And the way it works is that in an agile project where we work with hardware or mechanical design, a backlog is actually the assumptions, the core assumptions that we have around requirements. That is what in software is called use cases, but it's also the release plan or the project plan, because we have a lot of long lead items. We have, you know, you gotta order tooling before you start production, etc. There are things that, you know, come in sequencing here. So our product backlog is constituted by, or is really top priority assumptions that you can see here around needs and etc. And then it's the upcoming important stuff or long lead items in the release plans that we need to act on. So the way it works, backlog refinement, is actually that the product owner starts moving assumptions in assumptions or requirements in the top priority corner, what we call leap of faith assumption. He starts moving those from right to left, because what we have learned, what we have learned in this demo that we just saw, what uncertainty has we pulled out? Have we generated evidence for these assumptions or requirements, and then we move them to the left? So he starts moving them to the left. And while he's doing that, he's of course asking to the team, the cross-functional teams, if they have any comments or anything to that. So they're welcome to state that. And when they've done moving that, they say, okay, that's fine now. That's the current map of assumptions. That's what we have right now. And people, of course, are allowed to, in the session, allowed to add new ones. And often the product owner has prepared 1 or 2 new ones if there is something that's particularly important. So when that's done, then the assumptions map part of the backlog is done. Then we look at the release plan to the right, and actually, just ask ourselves, are these deadlines and these times, are they still the right ones? Is something happened? Has a major thing changed any of these things? And just sort of recap what are the key important upcoming milestones or long lead items that we need to be aware of. That basically constitutes backlog refinement, and when the team has an agreed picture about what's a current view of the assumptions, hot topics or hot priority issues, and the release plan, then we have a backlog, a refined backlog.
Yes, and after the backlog refinement session, we move to the retrospective, which essentially is reflecting about the process that we've used to create progress. So you spend a little bit of time on the way of working and how you can improve that. And the first thing you do in a retrospective is that we did a what we call a pulse check, which essentially is just measuring the engagement currently in the team. So right here, we asked the team the question, I feel that we're on the right path to developing customer value, and then asked them to write a number from 1 to 5, whether they completely disagree or agreed on this, and essentially just put it into the map right here, as you can see is being done right now. And if there are any outliers, we facilitated a discussion around that, but this is essentially just, the purpose of this is to create a quantitative measure that you can later use to track whether you're on the right path or not. Because the real interesting part is over here in the sprint retrospective, where you ask 4 different questions. So what went well? What can we improve? What will I do different? And what will we do different in the next sprint? The way we did this is that we asked everyone to put a post-it into this space here and reflect upon the question. And in the end, we used the stars that you can see on the bottom right here to narrow down the focus for the next sprint. So there's a lot of things that you can improve in a process, but we really need to stay focused on a few things in order for it to not become a theater exercise where we talk about a lot of things we want to change, but don't really change anything. So that is the retrospective.
Yes. And then we had the lunch break in this case, a good hour where people could get away from the screen and enjoy a little nice food or whatever they had at home. Everybody was sitting at home. There was nobody sitting together here, which was kind of interesting. But then we had the sprint planning session. There's the 2-hour session to round off this day. And it actually started with actually where you have the sprint plan. You can see it here, where we asked people to go in and clean up the sprint plan. That was basically the stuff from the last sprint that has already been done. I mean, it's all been checked off here. You could also do a Kanban board like you do in Scrum, but we just choose for many different reasons to have actually more of a visual plan with a timeline. So they took off all the checked off stepping stones, and when that was done, then whatever was not accomplished was removed to the column on the right that says next sprint. Then after that was done, we looked into the capacity in this sprint, and we didn't do a story points or anything like that from the Scrum world. So we basically said, you know, what are the number of days we have available to pull in, and a day is pretty much a lot of 8 hours of work plus minus. So that's what we looked at. Every participant in the team, how many days I had in the first week. For instance, Matt, he had 5 days in the first week and 5 days in the next week, and that's important because he was a Scrum Master. So that was good, and then it goes to follows down. So when we were clear about, we had a clean plan and we had all the capacity ready, then we said, okay, let's convert the product backlog into a sprint backlog. And the product backlog, like I said, is the hot corner of the assumptions map and the upcoming events in the release plan. So basically ask people, you say, you know, within your area of specialization, because they're specialized in different areas. Some is mechanical design, electrical design, software, different things. Within your area, which of those hot topics or hot assumptions should we need to act on pretty fast? And obviously those that are very important and where we have very little evidence, we need to act on those fast. So we need to find ways of testing these, whether it's just, you know, it could be doing an MVP, whatever that is. It can be big things and small things, or just be testing it by doing different things, calculations, having meetings with suppliers or customers, etc. So we translated those top priority assumptions and the upcoming stuff in the release plan. We asked everybody on the team to translate that into what would they have to do with their skill set, and what would they like to deliver within the next 2 weeks to demonstrate next time when we meet. So they did that. They wrote that down in the sprint backlog, as Christian is zooming into now. And here you had an example of them. And so actually here's some 20 sprint backlog items roughly. And actually, it should never be more than that, actually, because we have to be aware that people don't start putting in stepping stones and, you know, take the phone, call somebody, but it's actually at a level that kind of constitutes a sprint deliverable. So they did that here, and so now we had the sprint backlog, and we talked about that, and everybody sort of in the team agreed, yes, that's good. It's typically it's very ambitious, but I think we can do it. So that's the discussion they had, and we said that the sprint goal was also defined a little bit by the product owner, said it is really to be ready for testing with the sample products. And this was the idea in this 2-week sprint. Then we asked everybody individually to copy the backlog items. So basically take and copy paste. You can do it just like in PowerPoint, copy paste and move them over in the plan on the day where they would actually finish it. So that would of course be towards the end of the sprint. So they did that individually, and then it was fun to see. Now we see only a couple of colleagues here, but when you see like 10 people zooming around this back and forth, it almost feels a little bit like, hey, we got a good energy going here, even though you're not physically together with anybody. So that's kind of fun. But then after putting up the sprint backlog items, we asked people to basically pretty much traditional project management, to define individually what are your stepping stones. What are your stepping stones in getting to that sprint backlog items, to delivering that. They did that individually. Somebody in teams of 2, if there were 2 like in the design engineers who worked together, or there were 2 people from supply chain. And after that was done, we basically walked through everything from the top. And when you do that, of course, discipline is important. It's very important in a real room. It's more important when you facilitate it here, that you make sure that people really talk about what they've written, and it's focused, and they can see who's pointing where are we now, etc. This is very important, because otherwise, so there's a lot of planning in doing that actually. But basically, we walked through the whole plan, and feedback were given, really good discussion. You have to actually demand everybody comment on everything, because we're doing this project together. The whole team is creating a business together. It's not the responsibility of marketing. And going through that, and some final checkups by the Scrum Master about, whether You know, do we feel good about this plan? Does this feel all right? And if we do that, then we did at the end, we did our virtual high five and got back to work. And that was pretty much the end of those sprint planning session. And now I guess here you see the hope, and you can say what was the impact of that? And on the top part, here you have some quotes from different people. You know, they were actually very surprised that it works so well in Miro, and they started they kind of love Miro. And it's also a really nice software, very easy to use. There's not really any functionality in it, but it's really easy. So some of the key impacts we had here, it was just that we reached, it says at the bottom, it says we reached a drawing, design and bomb freeze in half of the time of what would normally happen. And that was even while working completely dislocated physically. We walked through, they were really good at, like Christian said, at being entrepreneurial and challenging everything. We reduced testing and preparation time by 67%, which was really awesome. And we saw an increase of the engagement from, in this case, we had the very first initial kickoff that was physical, and we measured overall the virtual sprints that we had after that, that going virtual, the engagement pulse was increasing, which I thought was kind of crazy, but it also felt really nice. So yes, and you can say for getting here and how do you get to a state where you have maybe some of you probably have tried it and you're also here just to see how others do it, but in getting to a state where it works really well, we think there are 4 important steps, and one of course is to project managers onboarded, and in this case, project manager, that'd be a scrum master and the product owner, which constitutes the management team of the business creation team. And then of course, there's some sponsors, investors, what do you call them, that they're on board with how we do this, and there are the different rules, and really appeal to everybody in the network to take it seriously and be extra structured when you work like this. Then point number 2, which is also very important, is you all know you say crap in, crap out. So if you take a process that is not very structured and put it into Miro, you're going to have a disaster. So you need to have a structured process. And what we've been doing in the cases where we did it, we have a very stringent script on a 5-minute basis for all the events that is in the Agile cycle. And when you have that, you can do the events just as efficient and just as fast in Miro. It doesn't have to take a longer time because you're in Miro or anything. It's sometimes actually even faster with the same result. And the third one is, of course, to design and populate the virtual room. The design, it has to look nice, like Christian showed. You have demo area, planning area, retro area, team values area, etc. Some inspiration zone maybe. Just like it's a really cool room, like a cool room should be in the reality. Let's make it cool also virtually. And then, of course, you have to populate it, whether you take stuff from Atlassian tool or MS Project or wherever you have it, or you take pictures of the physical room and then translate it into a Miro post-it notes. It's not that difficult. It takes a little time. It's quite easy. And then you said virtual onboarding of project participants. And what we did in this case was just the first event we held like this. We just made sure that we put in like a half an hour introduction where people could try and write post-its and move them around, and you get the hang on it really fast. I'm sure many of you already tried it. So that works pretty easy. We've done this in quite a few cases, and then just sort of recent cases was physical products for construction industry case. This is the one we actually talked to you about. Then we also did a lot where we built like a mechanical design, physical solutions in a hi-fi world. And then we also had a project recently where we did more like a physical engineering projects, mechanical projects. And some of the stuff what we help companies with in this case and going virtual and going agile could be either just, as a 3 areas here, either just sort of kickstart pilots, just get a project, establish a solid process and get it online and have the first session with them, and then they run. Then sometimes we've done that when it says kickstart and run pilots. We've also supported pilots, because there's a great deal of coaching, how a scrum master and product owner, how they act in there and how you keep a good good energy virtually. So it's not that easy. So sometimes they can need some help doing that. And then also what we're doing, roll out across portfolio, basically take more like training on a generic level to actually share out to and create a concept and templates and distribute those to the PMs, project managers or scrum masters or whoever is doing it, and make them actually do it. So so this is actually it. We don't really have much time for questions here. So time is up, but we would be very happy if you want to hear more details about how we've done this and this and that, or you're about to do it, or you've already tried it and want to share some experiences. We would just love to talk to this about you, or talk to you about this, because we think with all the Corona now going on probably for a long time, we're going to see a lot of virtual collaboration, and we want to. We like to hear and work, hear your experiences, etc. So give us a shout if you want to know more, if you want to share, if you want to discuss anything. But other than that, thanks for. Is that where we say thanks now, Christian?
I think it is.
Thanks for listening in.
Thank you.
And
have a good day.
Have a great one. Bye.